4 is that council move out of the Committee of Adjustment and pursuant to the Planning Act that the public meeting be adjourned at 9:10 a.m. and the regular meeting of council be called back to order. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we got 5 minutes to wait until we do the intercommunity bus transit proposal delegation. Pretty sure we can't get the traffic calming policy report done in 5 minutes. What about 8.5A Finance Department Development Charges Amendments Report? I think we can get that one done in the next 5 minutes-ish. Maureen's not here because she has food poisoning, I guess. So it's going to be up to Donna to speak to that. Sorry, Donna, didn't mean to give you a hard time. So I'm going to assume there's nothing you want to highlight in that for council done. So any questions from council on that report? Now I'm just going to find there it is. Moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies, that memorandum 2020-125 from the Director of Finance be received, and that council authorize the Township of Zorra Director of Finance to participate in a joint study with the County of Oxford and the area municipalities to review and update the current development charges background study and bylaw to reflect amendments to changes in current legislation. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I think probably we could do the budget process one. There we go. So item 8.5B, budget process. Anything you want to highlight in that, Don? Questions from Councilor Paul?
Just refresh my memory, Don. Once we improve the capital budget in principle, can staff start sending out tenders at that point?
Yes.
Okay. So it's same process as last year, basically same timetable.
That's correct.
Only this year, on that December 2nd meeting, we hope to be awarding the maintenance contract, if all goes as well.
We hope so, yes.
Yeah.
So I believe the closing date is in mid-November.
I think the 18th, I think he was on.
So the next council meeting after that would be December 2nd.
So that would be the centerpiece of our capital budget. And
yes.
we can work around that.
Anyone else? Questions on that one? Moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies, that memorandum 2020-126 from the Director of Finance be received and filed, and that council adopts the 2021 budget process as presented. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I think probably now we just wait 30 seconds and do the bus transit one. I'm not going to try and squeak anything else in there, I don't think. So, David, so this is the second time we've heard from Oxford County Public Works on the intercommunity bus transit proposal. So since it's the second delegation, new information only. Council's received reports and received your delegation last time, so I'd ask you to just present any new material, anything that's changed since the last time you were here.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan, and again, thanks to Zorra Council for the opportunity to come back and hear on this dialogue on the proposal for community bus transit partnership. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that may come up through the dialogue today. Really have no new information. Everything you've seen, I believe, is quite consistent dating back to August. The one point of clarification I would like to make is around ridership, because I know there was a fair bit of discussion not only at this council, but several councils, just to clarify the ridership. So I did speak to the term general ridership at the last council. Our general ridership would be estimated at about 1 rider per hour. So for 8 operating hours per day, that would be 8 riders per day in day 1. And we would see that progressing in 2025 to 2 riders per hour. So progressing that up to 16. So I use that general ridership term just to reflect those using that service for leisure, accessing medical health care appointments, students, millennials, and any other users of that general category. We've also looked at the ability to get persons using social assistance in addition to that general ridership. In our work with Human Services, we've discovered that there are 250 individuals already in the northern part of Oxford County that are eligible for Ontario Works or OVSP. So to that end, we made additional ridership estimates on top of what I've just spoken to there. And then lastly, that third additional category that we spent a fair bit of time talking about is getting more business employees on that bus. So just to reconfirm our ridership projections, in 2021, which would be a 3-day-a-week, 9-month-a-year service, we're estimating over 2,800 riders all in. That would grow to over 3,700 trips or riders in 2022 and 2023, and then that would grow to approximately over 4,000 2024, and then progressing up over 6,000 from 2025 onwards. So I just wanted to, again, kind of clarify the magnitude of those ridership estimates, and that's what's basing our fare revenue. That's part of the financial model that was part of the previous delegation. So I will leave it at that, and here to answer any questions as they arise through council. Thank you.
Questions from council? Paul?
My first set of questions, David, I would say general concept of the whole proposal. In your original presentation there's a line there that states that there is no historical information to forecast transit ridership. So where did you get the information to estimate fare revenue?
Through the mayor to Councillor Mitchell, we did a lot of work before we even launched this initiative, doing review with the Southwest Transit Community Association. We've done a lot of research with our area municipalities in Tillsonburg, as well as a lot of the neighboring municipalities in Norfolk, Middlesex, Lambton Shores, Stratford. So we looked at what a lot of our comparator municipalities were putting in for ridership estimates based on their service. And those estimates range from Tillsonburg's end of the spectrum, which is basically 1 rider per trip, and that's consistent basically with the ridership I was referring to earlier, to the other end of the spectrum, which would be Lambton Shores, that looked at about 4 to 5 riders per trip, which we thought perhaps might be a bit aggressive day 1, certainly attainable in the longer term, but that was predominantly the basis for our estimation there.
Anything else? Ron?
One of my concerns is that we're committing ourselves to a 7-year program here. Is there a, year 3, can we review it, say it's not working and pull the plug, or it is working and maybe add a bus or something like that? Like, is there a mechanism for that?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Forbes. Certainly in our dialogue with the MTO Strategic Transit Office, they want to see all participating municipalities in this for as long a period as possible and securing multi-year financial commitments. That being said, if collectively the absolute worst case scenario presents itself, which I don't believe it will, should it present itself and we find we're just not hitting that effective ridership that we would like to see, which is the ultimate goal of this initiative, in year 3, year 4, there's nothing holding any of the partnering municipalities from pulling out of the initiative. I would hope we wouldn't get to that point, and I think it's rather unlikely we would. but you're certainly not, you're not handcuffed to a multi-year financial commitment, although we would be seeking a Zorra bylaw in that regard. But again, that bylaw would be under your control year in, year out. So if you chose 3 to 4 years to pull out of the initiative for whatever reason, that decision purely rests with Zorra.
I'll follow up on that question. Kind of a two-part question. We're looking at a partnership here, of multiple municipalities. So would the partnership, would there be a formal partnership, a contract or agreement signed between those municipalities? And that's the first part of my question. If you,
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Mitchell. Certainly between the 3 lower tier municipal partners, we'd be seeking an active partnership. Part of that would involve Zorra seeking municipal consent from both the Township of AZT and the Township of Blanford-Blenheim to actually offer transit services within their jurisdiction. So that would be part of the nature of that servicing agreement. And then the second part would just be the financial commitments that Zorra would be seeking in writing from AZT and perhaps Blanford-Blenheim down the road. So that's basically there to frame the agreement, the details of the service provision, and also demonstrate to the MTO Strategic Transit Office that we've got a collaborative, sustainable partnership in place.
so as the host municipality, would Zorra be the actual one that signs a contract with the service provider, since there's no partnership? If there's no partnership beyond a bylaw, there's no legal entity to enter into a contract. It would be Zorra that actually enters into the contract?
Through the Mayor and Council Mitchell, that's correct. Zorra would be potentially awarding that service contract to the preferred vendor.
So then to follow up on what the answer you gave to Ron, how do we opt out of a contract? Is there a clause in there that it says after 2 or 3 years, we're going to cancel this contract? Or if we sign a 5-year contract, we're obligated unless there's some type of an opt-out clause in there, and opt-out clauses have penalties. Can you fill us in on that?
Certainly through the Mayor to Councillor Mitchell, certainly that type of language and wording would be solely up to Zorra in terms of how they might pursue negotiating that contract with the preferred vendor. It's quite common practice to have those types of extra clauses in those types of agreements. So it would purely come down to a negotiation with the preferred vendor. But that language, that detail is entirely up to the discretion of Zorra.
Anyone else? Paul?
You talked in your presentations about interconnectivity with the other bus systems that are being set up. So Tillsonburg, the Tillsonburg South Oxford line, the London through St. Mary's Stratford Kitchener line, and the Stratford Perth County line, which is comes out of Stratford, and there's two routes going through the interior of Perth County. They're all receiving $1.45 million from, and the Middlesex County line, which is the one that goes from Woodstock to London, that goes through Thamesford, is receiving $1.5 million in funding over the next 3 years through the Community Transportation Grant Program funding. Don't see any of that money in this proposal. Did you apply for that funding?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Mitchell, Oxford County strategically waited to see kind of how all the participating municipalities came to be. And we really wanted to sit back and look at how the potential routing might come into play to see if there were any gaps. And that was largely our exercise earlier in the year, that once the majority of those area municipality service contracts were awarded, we were getting details on the routing, and that's why this initiative came to the table, that it was very obvious that there was a service gap in North Oxford. I think, as I alluded to in previous presentations, we purposely wanted to bring a model forward that was not reliant on community transportation grant funding that will come and go. So what I brought forward here is a long-term sustainable funding model, and that's based on dedicated gas tax, transit gas tax funding that we get year in, year out in the province, so that we don't have any concerns with that funding ending, as will be the case with all of the other systems that are up and running now and soon to be launched under the Community Transportation Grant Program. So they're going to be faced with a very similar decision that we're talking about here today, come 2023, because there's very low likelihood that they'll receive any further community transportation grant funding from the province. The province really wants this to launch those systems, and then those respective municipalities can start learning how they can run that system sustainably once that grant funding ends.
Okay. I think one of the questions I hear is, why are we going 5-year commitment? Well, these other systems that I just mentioned are all basically 3-year pilot projects. So the one advantage that these other projects have is that their fares are much cheaper. Well, the Tillsonburg one's charging $10 a trip, but the other ones are either $5 or $6. Another question I have, the entire route is 124 kilometers long, but 30 kilometers that, plus 2 fixed stops are not in Oxford County. So why aren't the region of Waterloo and the Perth County contributing to the operating and capital costs?
Through the mayor to Councillor Mitchell, the 2 strategic interregional connection points in New Hamburg and Shakespeare. So Councillor Mitchell, just to reiterate, that connection point in New Hamburg ties into the Grand River Transit Association. Secondly, that transfer point at Shakespeare ties into the Stratford Intercommunity Transportation System. So we're deeming those in the sense that we're not providing transit service within the jurisdiction of the Township of Wilmot or the Township of Perth East. That being said, we would still be seeking likely municipal consent just to run the buses through there. But much like our hub location in Woodstock, those would just be strategic single point stops where we're just emptying the bus and refilling the bus. So it's really not providing service throughout the region outside of the jurisdiction of Oxford. So we wouldn't be seeking financial commitments in that regard.
But people that live in Shakespeare and New Hamburg and area, they can still ride our bus. There's nothing to prevent them from getting on this bus.
Through the mayor, Councillor Mitchell, those residents could certainly choose to pay their fare to get onto the Grand River Transit System or the Stratford Community Bus System, and then tie into our network. If they're coming again from the Stratford system, we talked about a free fare integration that they could carry on our system, just for the purpose of really facilitating ridership and effective people movement. So that's how we deem that to be undertaken.
The next questions are about the fixed and flex stops. First question is, there's only one fixed stop. The only fixed stop in Zorra is in Imbro. Is there an expectation that Zorra builds a bus shelter in Imbro?
Through the board and Councillor Mitchell, certainly as ridership progresses and we get further down the road, those are types of infrastructure we could certainly look to add to the model. Obviously, that will add some additional costing to the model. We wanted to make sure we secured that ridership and developed that to the greatest degree possible. There's nothing preventing us year in or year out throughout that 7-year term to consider bringing in additional transit shelter infrastructure, and that type of investment would also be eligible for gas tax funding. So typically, I'll just throw out a number, $5,000 for a shelter, you would get essentially 75 cents back on the dollar through gas tax for that investment. So it is possible. It's something that we've already worked on in ways in complement with Zorra for the stop in Middlesex, the stop in Thamesford as part of the Middlesex route. So it'll be those similar types of conversations.
The RFP specifies 9 fixed stops and 6 flex stops. Are these the only places that a passenger can be picked up or dropped off?
Through the mayor, Councilor Mitchell, that was certainly our starting point as a crude guide of where we thought the most interest was for those stops. We've field tested those routes in terms of timing and distance. The next step hypothetically, should we get to a point where Zorra can award this service, is the preferred bus vendor would then be validating those routes, helping to work with us on scheduling and route locations and stops, proposed stops. So I wouldn't say that what's in there is 100% set. There's flexibility there for changes to be made. But based on our cursory review, we feel that was an appropriate number of fixed and flex stops.
So
I think it just keeps getting.
the only
You can
place
sit,
that,
David, if you want. We don't,
Oh,
it's not a requirement in our procedural bylaw that people stand to request.
Get some exercise in there.
Yeah.
so the only place they could be picked up is at a stop. It's if you lived on a route and wanted to flag the bus down, that's not possible.
I won't say at this point it's not possible. Again, there will be an active dispatch service as part of that service provision. And it's really up to that end rider to give that bus route, the bus driver enough notice of when and where they want to be picked up. So I think as I explained before, the whole intent of the flex stops was merely that, to provide flexibility along that route, meaning theoretically, pending the number of requests, it's quite easy for that route driver or bus driver to go 5 to 10 minutes off of that main fixed route, which was shown in bold red. So those are flexibility points that you have pretty much anywhere through that route. It just depends on the number of requests that can be accommodated on a given day to still maintain that schedule.
Go ahead.
Passengers meeting the bus, you have flex stops in Maplewood, Harrington, and Brooksdale. There's 5 houses in Brooksdale and 8 houses in Maplewood, so pretty well everybody's gonna have to drive there. Well, where would they park?
I'm going to draw you back, Councilor Mitchell, to our survey outreach, and honestly, we had 75% of the respondents come back saying how they would get from their home to the bus stop pickup location would be through active transportation. Obviously, they could also choose to get dropped off there and or drive. We can certainly further investigate the feasibility of additional parking area along that corridor or with any of the settlement clusters along the way. That's something that's been done regularly as part of the Tilsonburg startup. Middlesex is obviously doing a similar exercise as well. But I'm just suggesting I'm not convinced the majority of those potential riders might be using a car to get to the bus stop based on the feedback we received.
One of the flex stops is in Hickson, so which is at least a 15-minute round trip off the route. So if somebody booked a flex stop in Hickson, would they still be able for the bus to make flex stops in Harrington, Brooksdale, and Maplewood on that same trip?
Yeah, again, Councilor Mitchell, that would come down to the number of requests that would come into the dispatch unit that day, and they would decide, if they had 4 competing requests within that general area to what you just referenced, they would indicate to the riders which of those 4 or up to those 4 that they could accommodate. So, there will be days most likely where there's no requests in North Zorra there at those 3 flex stops, in which case it makes a lot more sense for the service provider just to run down 59 through Hickson to pick up that flex stop and then again cross country back over to Emerald for the fixed stop. So it's really a daily choice by the service provider and also a choice per route. So they're making changes on the fly in the AMP period and the PMP period, and that's what I think is one of the real features of this service that again, it's the fact that we've gone well beyond just a defined fixed route schedule. We can bob and weave as the demand changes.
So how would they decide which flex stop they make? Is it a first come, first serve?
Yes.
Anything else? How many more do you have?
I'm about half done.
Okay, I'm gonna ask that you prioritize, we're 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
I have only one
No,
question from
I'm-
another counselor, so.
Yeah, I've been skipping over
Okay.
some of them. Yeah, I've pruned down my list. My next questions are in scheduling. You stated in your last presentation that 4 trips could take approximately 6 to 6.5 hours per day. Have you ever driven the route?
We have already field validated, basically, New Hamburg to Woodstock each way. We drove that around 45 to 50 minutes, and that's stopping at every single stop. So respecting the fact that some of those stops being flex stops may not actually be triggered on a given route. So again, I believe, that AM period may be up to 3 hours now that we've field tested the route. We're keeping a bit of flexibility to call that as 4 hours per route, just to make sure we've got enough means to do that. Obviously, the fewer stops the carrier has to make, it can get from A to B quicker. And theoretically, if we find out we can cover off that AM and PM peak period, say in 6 hours, that would free up an additional 2 hours of coverage during the midday that we could also offer. Just, we can't even start that conversation until, you've got a service provider on board and you let them apply their expertise to the route.
I also drove the route, and it took me, I won't go into the details because it's not officially a question, but it took me 1 hour and 49 minutes to do 118 kilometers, and you've added another 6 kilometers beyond that. So I'm just in the question period, so I can't dispute the information you just give me, but my personal experience is that it would be tough going to get it done in 2 hours. My next question is, none of the presentations you've included a bus schedule, so we don't know when the pickups and drop-offs are going to be in Zorra Township. So why haven't you given us a schedule so that we can see how effective this scheduling is going to be?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Mitchell, obviously that would be the responsibility of the preferred service provider. At best, we could provide a hypothetical schedule now, but it's really meaningless to you've awarded the contract and you brought in a third-party expert to really define what that scheduling can look like and truly fully integrate it with the schedules of the other intercommunity bus systems. So I feel it would be a waste of time, resources, and money to engage in that effort now until you've got your service provider onboarded, awarded, and you allow them to utilize their expertise to define that schedule.
You talk a lot about interconnectivity with the other the other systems. What's your estimated amount of waiting time that they will have at the various stops in Woodstock, New Hamburg, and Shakespeare?
Yeah, I would see that maybe up to a 5-8 minute layover. We essentially seek a seamless transfer onto the systems, and again, that's why we would be bringing on potentially a third-party bus carrier that will be looking at all of those respective bus schedules of other systems to determine how to best integrate that.
So at this point, that's just a guesstimate, 8 or 10 minutes until
Well,
you've looked at the
it's
schedules.
Sorry, through the mayor to Councillor Mitchell. It's based on good fundamental transit knowledge. You kept close watch of how Middlesex has launched their schedule, how Flissenburg has launched their schedule. Transit is complicated, but it's not rocket science either, and a lot of general principles can be applied.
What type of facilities are at these transfer systems? Are these buildings where they have Wi-Fi and washrooms and place to sit down, or are they going to be waiting in a bus shelter somewhere?
Through the mayor to Councillor Mitchell, these would be purely outdoor facilities, like you referenced. So again, if you've ever been to Woodstock Transit Hub, that would be quite consistent with the exchange point there. that links into Middlesex and Tilsonburg. In terms of the connection point to Grand River Transit, it would be an outdoor parking lot area, and we haven't defined the exact spot in Shakespeare in terms of that kind of viewpoint to the Stratford system.
Next questions are about potential riders, and could we have the slide about, I had sent out to yourself and to the other council some,
Can I just get you to speak to it, Paul, as opposed to getting the slides up?
Mhm.
I mean, our procedural bylaw is silent on it, but it has not been the practice in any council that I'm aware of where we put up slides, and I'm wary of us moving into a world where everybody comes with slideshows for everything. And
no, that's fine. What I was trying to accomplish with this comes from Katie's concern at the last meeting that,
So, actually, first of all, is this a question?
it's just some background of why.
But we're at questions, because there's no
Okay.
motion on the floor to debate right now.
Okay.
So we're at questions for the delegation, so we can entertain that, but when questions are done.
Okay.
Okay.
So everybody's had an opportunity to read the calculations. What I was trying to do was get a comparison between driving and riding a bus. The calculations come out for a full-time person, full-time employee in Embro to Woodstock or reverse are about the same. So from an employee standpoint, why would they ride the bus when they're going to have, when the cost is about the same and they have no flexibility? They would basically have to live in Embro and work in downtown Woodstock and reverse to be able to make, to use the bus as their sole way of getting back and forth.
Through the mayor to Councilor Mitchell, I would purely tie that to a number of workers are low-income workers that simply can't afford the cost of car ownership. I can certainly share calculations that I've done on the true expense of that system per rider trip, and relating that back to the ridership I indicated earlier. Outside of the years where you're also doing operating and capital procurement for fleet, really the cost per rider trip from a true system expense only ranges from $20 to $30 a trip. So if you wanted to use that as your comparison metric to what it would cost to run and operate a car, I'd be very interested in seeing what that gas consumption and mileage would be, let alone the ongoing O&M cost to operate a car, not to mention purchase a car. So that would be my comment there.
Anyone else? Ron?
We're looking at committing $22,000, other than the first year, $22,000 every year thereafter. How is that number going to change? Well, Blanford Blenheim is now, they've opted out of this, it looks like. Where does that, does their share get dumped on Zorra and EZT, or is there another method there?
Yeah, we're certainly all seeking to reach that same municipal.
Sorry, if I could just interrupt, Alicia reminded me, and I
Oh,
forgot,
sorry.
because apparently the mics aren't picking us up very well, so we need to make sure we each use our mics. You gotta turn it on, too.
Yeah. We asked a question?
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Through the mayor to Councillor Forbes, certainly all of the remaining partners are seeking the ability to reach that same municipal level contribution. So pending what happens today, we would still be seeking making up the difference with Blanford Blenheim being out of the picture right now. Again, our discussions with Blanford Blenheim have been fairly positive. They recognize the need for the service. There's nothing to say that Blanford Blenheim may not be back in the mix down the road. But certainly I don't feel by any means it's a showstopper, given that they made the current decision not to participate financially.
But,
So just to clarify, it doesn't impact our gas tax funding envelope. That's not impacted, which was my immediate
yeah.
check as soon as I left Blanford Blenheim's council decision a couple weeks ago. So we're still in a very viable financial position, in my opinion.
We're viable, but Zorra's 22,000 to go to 33,000.
That would be the decision of this council. That's the choice.
I'm just trying to figure out where our choice would be. Like, we need to get, so if we lose a partner in this, is what I'm getting at, there's a $22,000 gap in there. And who makes that up? We can't go to the gas tax and say we need another 22. That's not gonna happen, their number's fixed. We're less likely to get an extra 22 out of the county. So I'm thinking there's only 2 partners left.
Yeah. Through the Mayor and Council Forbes, I would just caution commenting on behalf of the county that we firmly come to the table with the suggestion of a grant contribution, and a significant grant contribution at that. There's nothing to say, 2, 3, 4 years down the road that number might have to change in terms of the county's contribution. I'm personally quite open to, reviewing that as necessary financially. And as you said, if any one of the other 2 partners fall out, for whatever reason, we would certainly need to revisit that, but I'll leave it at that.
Katie?
So a lot of the answers to these questions are sort of, based off of the ideal service provider, how they choose to, with schedules. And with Zorra, we'll have some ability to put verbiage into agreements in order to have things fit together exactly how, this is sort of, we're talking about details, but we're still a little bit high level with how, in terms of some of the questions are very, daily operations, we're not quite there yet. So my question is, as a county representative coming here and explaining to us how this program works, with Zorra in the position of agreeing to be the lead on this in combination with other area municipality or municipalities in the future. When we're assessing, if we're wanting to look at, 3 years down the road or 4 years down the road, are we meeting certain thresholds? Who is going to be deciding what those thresholds are, and what, if we decide to move forward with this, is then Zorra is Zorra sort of taking over part of the role that you have played, or is there still county involvement in terms of assessing how the service is running, when and where to pull out, how to communicate with the other municipalities?
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Davies. Certainly from day one, we've always viewed this, at least from the county level, as a very collaborative partnership. That doesn't mean potentially come the day where Zorra awards the service, that we disappear, EZT disappears. We're all going to be right there at the table alongside, actively contributing to make this service successful and sustainable. So to me, just because we go from October to November doesn't change anything in terms of the county's commitment to this project long term. It does position Zorra in the driving seat in the fact that they would be retaining a part-time transit coordinator. That coordinator would be regularly tracking ridership, working with the service carrier, giving you year-end numbers in and out, monitoring the cash flow up and down from the province. So Zorra will be the closest to that information, but collectively all of us will be active at the table while those dialogues will be going on. I would be as equally interested in the ridership numbers as Zorra and ECT would be long-term, as well as the financial, obviously. So again, I'll say it again, from day one, we viewed this that, we want it to be a collaborative partnership. It's been, in my opinion, too big of a hurdle just for an area municipality to take it on their own historically, just based on the financial burdens, and that's why I truly believe the partnership model with shared funding is the way to make the system work and sustain itself.
Follow up on Ron's question about the funding. Your first presentation, you said that the bulk of the gas tax money was based on population. But if I heard you right, you just said that gas tax funding won't be impacted because Blandford Blenheim's not in.
Correct.
How does that work? Because obviously we don't have as much population applying for this.
Yeah, no, that's a good observation. Basically, the easiest way to frame it, there's a couple different complexities with the MTO gas tax funding. I'll word it this way, with Blandford Blenheim in, your upset limit that you could seek in terms of gas tax funding would be up to $200,000 a year approximately, based on service population. With Blandford Blenheim dropping out at this point, that upset limit drops down to about $135,000 to $140,000, which still exceeds 75% of what our collective municipal contributions are.
Okay.
Steve?
Somewhat of a follow-up on what Ron was asking. If Blandford Blenheim, or if any of us opt out, now is their chunk of the route eliminated as well, or are they going to end up not contributing but still having the bus go through their municipality?
Yeah, I think a lot of that would come down to negotiation once we get to that point. We've always had the vision that this would be a system that's running through the 3 area municipalities. There may be some modifications to that, but I would still expect that if we are down to just the county, Township of Zorra and Township of EZT, there would still be a service offering through the Township of Blandford Blenheim to a degree. So again, that was always the fundamental intent, was that this system needed to service that gap in service that exists in all 3 of those area municipalities. And again, we could very well find ourselves in 2 or 3 years' time where Blandford Blenheim is pleasantly surprised with the ridership that we're attaining, and we want to get back in the mix. So there's nothing precluding them from rejoining the mix at that point. We just have to be within the agreement and negotiations through Zorra and the funding partners. And again, I truly think that's a luxury for Zorra to have that level of control, that they can dictate the nature of those agreements and have the flexibility to bring financial partners in there as necessary.
Paul?
Back to the ridership, the 3 of the groups that you identified were students, and I presume that's secondary school students, since we have a bus system for the younger students. Low-income people with no other affordable means of travel, millennials, and seniors. Do you have hard data from Stats Canada, how many people that meet those categories live in Zorra or the 3 municipalities, or are you relying totally on your surveys to come up with who's going to use this service?
Thank you, through the mayor, to Councilor Mitchell. Certainly the surveys deemed to validate a lot of the ridership type. We first came in with a very high-level qualitative analysis, and when you typically look at most transit systems, that's the nature of the ridership. And just to add to the students, I would remind you that we go on a field of college and university students that are leaving the county, trying to get into Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, Stratford, London, and even Frankfurt for that matter. So that again, I think is another great feature where, you know, a student could choose to take that service first thing Monday morning, get to their campus on time before classes start up, albeit most of them are virtual these days, and you know, spend their week at campus and then have a low-cost transportation option to get back home on the Friday. So for a very nominal fee.
So we're 40 minutes in now to questions and haven't got to a motion or debate yet. Are there more questions?
Yeah, I have a few more, but and I think we've hashed over the budget and I'm the funding and everything the ridership, our figures are pretty close. We're looking at around 4 riders per trip, going up to 6 or 7 riders per trip further on. So I'm not going to pursue those questions. I do have some miscellaneous questions. The first one is, the public meeting, Dennis Guy talked about climate change and clean air due to the use of the public transit. So what type of engine would this bus be using?
We've left that up to the third-party bus vendor. Based on their expertise, we would leave it up to them to define which vehicle choice is the.
But at this point, it would be diesel or gas?
Again, I can't speak to that. We've left that purely up to the expertise of the third-party carrier. Obviously, if you sought something, I can say if the vendor is seeking more of a electric powered or CNG powered bus, obviously that gets much more expensive and it's not realistic for this route given the lack of charging stations and or CNG fuel stations. So I would believe you would be correct in making the assumption that we would be gas or diesel.
Some of the major reasons that people use public transit are the stress and danger of driving in high traffic volumes. We've all heard the GTA traffic reports, and they're glad that we're not in that situation. And also the availability and cost of parking. But none of these factors are mentioned in any of your reports. Why not?
Thank you. Through the mayor, to Councilor Mitchell, I believe I alluded to that earlier. Based on the surveys, information we got back, that really validated in our minds that the majority of the riders using the service would be using active transportation to get to the bus stop and back. So there may be some riders get dropped off there, may choose to carpool there, but I really don't see car transportation as being the primary mode or need of riders trying to access the bus service.
I've got some more questions, but given the time limit, I will.
Any other questions? Kate?
So this is information that was probably available to me that I can't recall at the moment. So Blanford Blenheim at this point has opted out, and EZT has agreed to it prior to Blanford Blenheim opting out. So was there support motion specific to the 22,500 annual contribution starting in the following year moving forwards? So if we are to require a different split of financial contribution, it will require going back and their support of the program at this point may not be exactly what's needed. Is that accurate?
Through the mayor to Councilor Davies, I don't want to speak on ECT cap by any means. I do know, pending the decision today, as I said earlier, the remaining partners would then need to decide if they're still in or out and to what financial magnitude. So I do know ECT is quite interested in the outcome here today, and they will be further deliberating that this evening at their council, as will county, as we will be at the county level on October 28th. So again, I can't speak to semantics until we actually know the true financials.
Any other questions before I read a motion? So I have 2 motions in front of me. Only one of them has a mover and a seconder. So I will read that one. Moved by Katie Davies, seconded by Ron Forbes, that the Township of Zorra supports the North Oxford Intercommunity Bus Transit System through a collaborative partnership with the Township of Blanford Blenheim, the Township of East Zorra Tavistock, and Oxford County, and is committed to providing $15,000 of financial support in 2021 and ongoing annual support from 2022 to 2026 in the amount of $22,500. And further, that the Township of Zorra agrees to receiving and being responsible for the dedicated gas tax funds from the province of Ontario for the North Oxford Intercommunity Bus Transit System. And further, that the Township of Zorra consider potential partnership integration of the North Oxford Intercommunity Bus Transit System with a county-wide intercommunity bus bus transit system in 2027, providing both intra-county and inter-regional connections. Councillor Davies, do you wish to speak to this as a mover?
Sure. So here in Zorra, we are a member of ROEDC, Rural Oxford Economic Development Corporation, and we've had presentations come out as part of this consideration to sort of help identify, what that need is in our community. So three of the barriers that have been identified strongly for economic development for current existing businesses here in Zorra is reliable internet service and employees, and then as a link to employees, transportation. We have invested in Swift Plus as a result of the identified barrier that reliable internet service, how that impacts our economic development here in Zorra. And I think it's an easy decision because we all either have experienced or know many people who experience the impact of the shortfall of that reliable internet service, and especially because of COVID. COVID has really highlighted that in a very public way, where we're reading about it in the news. The impact of not having enough employees and people not being able to move around through lack of transportation. It may not have the same media attention or may not be as highlighted through the pandemic, but it is absolutely something that has been identified in a significant and ongoing basis by ROEDC. Did I say that right? ROEDC. When I look at this proposed transportation solution, I do have concerns that I've raised in the past about, the fare cost. I'm not as familiar with these routes and the way that people in these areas move to different programs, but when I look at the bus that stops in Tempsford and I look at the schedule and where it goes, I can see college kids living in Tempsford can take this bus and get to school in time and be home for dinner. I can see people who have appointments at the University Hospital can get on this bus and get to Masonville Mall where they can transfer and get to the hospital. And the times of it all makes sense. When I look at that schedule, because it's my stomping ground and I'm familiar with it, I can see how it can function. I don't have that same personal experience to see it, but I believe strongly in the need for it. And I think that this is an opportunity through the cost sharing and the gas tax funding for us to give a solid go to finding a solution to an identified barrier for economic development here in Zorra. And I would like to see moving forwards, especially with Zorra being the lead on this, that if this is something to move forwards and happen, that we develop a very robust method of looking at this and on an ongoing basis, so that if adjustments are needed to be made in order for this to be successful, that we're able to make those adjustments. So just really quick in summarizing, this may not be perfect, but if the option is perfect or not at all, I would much rather get this started, and the cost to me seems reasonable. Now the motion there is for that number to be $22,500 moving forwards, and I would be in support of keeping that number as such for the time being until future discussions with the other municipalities. Thank you.
Ron, as the seconder, you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, my thoughts on this from the beginning is there's a lot of taxpayer money in this. But having said that, the collaborative nature of the way it's been put together, the risk is pretty small for all the parties involved. And as long as we can keep all the parties involved, then I think going forward, it's a really small number for Zorra, and that's what we'll concentrate on here today, is that number of tax dollars is not huge, and as long as we've got an opportunity to revisit this in, say, 3 to 4 years, and that number is significant because in 3 to 4 years, you have a new council sitting at this table. If we go out 7 years, you've completely skipped the next term of council, and they're going to be dealing with a budget item that they might think is absolutely absurd, and why did that previous council do that? So I think it's important that we give that opportunity in this plan, and David has said that option is available, and hopefully we never have to use it. I would like to see this program thrive and grow, and there is definitely some possibilities to it, and I think although it's a high total taxpayer dollar number coming from each of the municipalities and everything, and the risk is small, I'm going to support this motion, and hopefully we can move forward with it.
Paul?
I'm going to speak against the motion. In order for a public transit system to be viable, it must offer a level of service comparable to private vehicles' usage in reliability, accessibility, safety, and cost. Cost in not only dollars, but more importantly in time. To quote the virtual public meeting, a community where I can get to where I want to go when I want to go there. The North Oxford Intercommunity Bus Transit Plan doesn't do that because it lacks the most important ingredient, sufficient population density. High population density not only allows for better bus service, but makes driving less appealing due to high traffic volumes. To put it in context, if we compare population densities based on the 2016 census, in the GTA, where public transit is an integral part of moving people, the population density of the City of Toronto was 4,334, Mississauga 2,468, Brampton 2,229. London, which has a very controversial and struggling transit system, has a population density of 913. Woodstock, which has 6 bus routes, 835. By comparison, the 3 municipalities for this proposed bus route, EZT 29.4, Blandford Blenheim 19.4, and Zorra 15.4 people per square kilometer. And I'm going to quote a few numbers from StatsCan, and in all those numbers we have to remember that Zorra is the lowest number that we can come up with as a breakdown, but actually when we're looking at this bus plan, you have to exclude approximately 2,000 people that live in Thamesford and area, because they're not going to use this bus route. So that brings us down to 11.6. Simply put, there aren't enough people to justify a level of transit that competes with private vehicles and provides a ridership that makes the system viable financially or operationally. The delegations presented 5 main reasons to implement this plan. Number 1 being it's good for the environment. 2, that there's widespread public approval. 3, that there's an untapped pool of riders. 4, there's minimal increase in taxes due to the municipal partnership. And 5, a sustainable funding model. And we'll take a minute or two to look at those various reasons. Number 1, we don't know the impact on the environment. It's probably going to be a diesel bus driving approximately 125,000 kilometers per year. Number 2, public approval. If we look at the online public survey, there was no definite question, do you support this business plan, yes or no? But there are 3 relevant questions. Number 5, what is the most you could afford to pay for this service before considering other options? Overall, it was 26% wouldn't pay, 27% said $8. The numbers in Zorra are similar, 28 and 24%. The adult fare is $10. Question number 8, how many one-way trips would you take in a month? 33% said not at all, and 11% said unsure. And question number 17, for North Oxford residents, how much of an increase are you willing to add to your township tax bill? 40% said no increase, 30% said a maximum of $2. If we have all 4 municipalities on board, the increase is $257, and if Oxford County or one of the other partners is out, that would be $343 per person. So the results of the poll show that a majority of residents who knew about the plan and cared enough to complete the survey don't support it as presented. Third reason, the plan identifies 5 groups of potential riders. Business employers, employees. In the business community survey, 4 out of 59 responded that they had employees living in Zorra. All of those were in Tempsford. Question number 7, does the proposed route help connect your employees to your workplace? 35 out of 60 said no or unsure. And question number 12, would you subsidize employee transit fares? There was a total of 58 responses. 4 said 50% subsidy, 8 said 25% subsidy, nobody said 75 or 100%, 46 said unsure. There was no opportunity to say 0 in this question. If we compare levels of service with Woodstock Transit and as far as employees' usage, North Oxford have one bus running at 2-hour intervals, service from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., 2:30 to 6:30 p.m. Monday to Friday at $10 a trip, 1 free transfer. Woodstock, by comparison, operates 6 buses on 30-minute intervals. They run 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday, $2.50 per trip with unlimited transfers, and there's also discounted monthly passes. According to Stats Canada, 1.5% of employees use public transit to get to work in Woodstock. So if Woodstock provides a service that's multiple times better than the proposed service at a quarter of the price, and hardly anybody uses it to get to work, so there's not going to be a flood of workers using it. The second group are students. We don't know how many Zorra residents commute to post-secondary education. My observation is that students that do commute use the money that they save on accommodation to own and operate a vehicle, and many students commute because they have part-time jobs, family commitments, or they are in apprenticeship or co-op programs. Mr. Simpson did make the point that students could use it to get back and forth to their accommodation, so I will give them that point on that. The third group is low-income people with no other affordable means of travel, and this is a group I can identify with because I grew up in a low-income family. Our only vehicle was an old pickup truck, and if our family went together, I rode in the back, so I can identify with them. According to the 2016 census, there are 3,070 total households in Zorra, of which approximately 300 are considered low income after tax. And we all make decisions of where we live and other things that we do based on what we can afford. And I don't believe that, although the government is responsible to provide basic services, I don't think it's the responsibility of government to ensure that people can live wherever they want, whether they can afford to or not. The fourth group is millennials who choose not to drive or own a vehicle. According to the 2016 census, there was 1,445 millennials in Zorra, and I talked to 3 of my 4 millennial-age kids who have ridden the public transit buses in Ottawa, Hamilton, and Windsor for feedback on their experience and this proposal. And it's true, my kids all made friends in university that don't drive, and the common factor on those friends was that they were all raised and they continue to live in Ottawa or the GTA. And having been through the experience 4 times, I can assure you that rural and small-town millennials get their driver's license and borrow, lease, or buy a vehicle as soon as possible after turning 16. It's not only practical and necessary, it's cultural, and it's a sign that you've grown up. And the last group is seniors who no longer can or don't want to drive. And according to the 2016 census, we had 760 residents aged 75 in Zorra, and I use 75 plus as a cutoff because most people drive until they're at least 80 when they have to do mandatory testing. There are a few that give up their license earlier. I'm not 75 yet, but I am a senior living in North Zorra. Sometime in the next 35 years, I will lose my driver's license. I'll have 3 main options. I can move to town into some type of senior housing probably. I could stay on the farm, use a taxi to get around, or I can stay on the farm and use the existing mobility transit system. And that, for me, would be the St. Mary's Mobility Transit System, which has a bus very similar to the one in the proposal. They have several passenger vans, but they also use taxi and private vehicles. They provide door-to-door service 7 days a week. They would go directly to the location or St. Mary's or to St. Mary's for connections to London, Stratford, Kitchener, and throughout Perth County. It costs 40 cents per kilometer for medical appointments, 70 cents per kilometer for social and shopping, and if under certain circumstances, would wait for the passenger for an additional fee. This bus and vans and the other vehicles travels to Lakeside and Harrington and area. It also works in partnership with Paris Transit Systems in Ingersoll, Woodstock, and Mitchell. Zorra contributes $1,000 a year to St. Mary's Mobility Bus, and this is where we should be investing to provide transit service for seniors and disabled. Reason number 4, minimal increase in taxes by partnering with other municipalities. As a partnership, this is a bad deal for Zorra. Ember is the only Zorra community on or near the route that has residents who can walk to the bus stop. If people have to drive to the bus stop, they're going to drive to their destination. And when you consider cost and convenience, this is not the same as going to catch a GO train. If Zorra signs a contract with the service provider, Zorra is responsible for fulfilling that contract. And this is a 5-year experiment without provincial funding. When talking about the partnership and the financing, as we've discussed, there's a lot of unknowns now because Blandford Blenheim has already said they're not interested. So what my comments from now on are about the proposal that was given before us, even though that proposal is really in limbo at this point. The Blandford Blenheim motion was resolved. Township of Blenheim declines to participate in the North Oxford Union Community Bus Transit System. The motion that was, so to my mind, that means that this whole plan has to be rethought, that why we would provide a bus service to a municipality that's not participating. I don't understand why that's even considered. And it makes all the funding, the revenue, and the expenses invalid to me. The East Zorra Tavistock was resolved that East Zorra Tavistock supports the North Bus System through a collaborative partnership with the Township of Blandford Blenheim. Zorra is committed to providing $15,000 financial support in 2021 and ongoing annual support from 2022 to 2026 in the amount of $22,500. So as we talked about earlier, their support was based on this partnership. Their dollars were based on this partnership. That's all in limbo. And the city of Woodstock passed a motion that they don't believe that Oxford participation meets is part of the Municipal Act, and that if Oxford does participate in this, they are directing staff to retain legal counsel to review whether that support is allowed. So we could have a situation where the largest lower tier municipality is in legal action against the county over this whole situation. In spite of these changes, we didn't receive an alternate plan with figures to tell us what our contribution would be based on the changes that have happened in the last 2 weeks. If you look at the total increase, excuse me here. If you divide the tax increase by total residents, a good example of it's only the price of a cup of coffee budgeting. If you divide the cost by the maximum number of people to come up with the lowest number. Well, we don't tax people, we tax property, we send tax bills to households. So the average increase for 3,070 Zorra households would be $733 with the county contribution, $977 without. Taxpayers don't divide the increases in the tax bill by the number of people live in the house. I think people get their tax bill, they say, my taxes went up $100, but there's 5 of us, so that's only $20 a bit ahead. I think they say my taxes, oh crap, they went up to $100, I'm not happy. So poll says that 63% of Zorra respondents would be willing to pay a maximum of $2, and as I just said a moment ago, the increase would be over $2 per person. The tax system is more complicated. Time you put in residential, commercial, industrial, commercial. We don't know how much the average property tax bill would be to increase and support this proposal, and that's what people are going to look at. The September 9th report to County Council suggested the same funding formula be adopted for the Tillsonburg bus system when their funding runs out, so that would be an increase in county tax levy. And the wild card in all this is that if Oxford was to become a partner, aside from the legal aspect from Woodstock, their representatives in county council will push hard to have county-wide taxation used to subsidize the Woodstock transit system. And I think they have the point. Why should Oxford County support the rural transit systems and not Woodstock? And if they don't, then that would lead more to the feelings of underrepresentation that we heard about when we were discussing the composition of county council. My last few points: sustainable funding model. This budget is, and I'm talking about the funding model that was put before us, because that's the one we're going to vote on. This budget is a financial iceberg with 10% of the fares above the surface, supported by 90% in government funding. And it's not a case of if you build it, they will come. In year 5, the predicted ridership goes up to from 4 to approximately 6 or 7 per trip, and government subsidy only goes down from 90 to 83%. And it doesn't matter if the government money comes from township, county, provincial, or federal levels. They're ultimately only two sources: taxation and increased debt. And I don't object to using provincial and federal funds to provide services to Zorra residents. If we can spend that money responsibly to provide a service or infrastructure that truly meets their needs and minimizes property taxes increases, then that's okay. I agree that municipalities do provide services that have little or no revenue: fire protection, police protection, bylaw enforcement, road maintenance. The two big differences is we're required by legislation to provide a mandated level of service for these programs, and also that these services are readily available to all residents of Zorra. This transit plan meets neither criteria. You could argue that the gas tax has been collected and Zorra will miss out and we don't participate in this proposal. I'm not the expert on gas tax that Mr. Simpson is, but it seems to me that according to the AMO report that we had on our last agenda, gas tax money can be used on a variety of things, including broadband, roads and bridges, etc. So, where Mr. Simpson and I disagree on this funding formula is that he calls it a financially sound model and an incredible financial opportunity. I see it as a waste of tax dollars and an attempt to keep up with the Joneses. And the Joneses are the other municipalities that are creating transit systems using the Community Transportation Grant Programming funding. But in 2023, when that funding ends, some of these transit systems that have enough population density and to provide a service that meets people's needs will survive. I think that the Middlesex route that runs through Chelmsford could be one of them. And at this point, we haven't been asked to contribute to that, but we possibly could be in 2023. And I think we should. If our residents benefit, then we should pay our share. And that could be a use for the gas tax money that we're contributing through our this other proposal. But many municipalities are going to say ridership just doesn't warrant continuing, and we don't have $500,000 a year to spend on it, so we were shutting it down. Not all experiments have successful results. They are going to concentrate, those municipalities are going to concentrate on providing transit for the few rural residents who need it through improved paratransit, working with Uber, which is something Innisfil, which has a population density of 139, by the way, has been doing for a few years, or on a solution that nobody has thought up yet. If we accept this proposal, Zorra will be left committed to a contract for at least 2 more years at that point. We don't know how much we'll be owing because the funding model is in limbo. I look at these figures and say, really, are we going to spend over $1.1 million over 5 years to have a bus drive around the countryside with 3 or 4 people on it? And we're going to do it at a time when governments, businesses, and individuals are going to be facing social and financial challenges unlike any we've seen in the last 80 or 90 years. Which brings me to my last point, the impact of COVID-19. In the budget, we have almost $52,000 budgeted for increased costs. I have a report here from Stats Canada that says that ridership from impact on public transit from pre-COVID to June, late June, when this was compiled, went from 13% to 3% throughout Canada. And the main reason, there's multiple reasons, but one of the main reasons, among those who used public transit before the pandemic who said they're not comfortable going back to the usual place of work, almost 94% reported that the fear of using public transit was one of their concerns about returning to their physical workplace. So this deals specifically with workers, but I think that fear is throughout the population. And I'll conclude with two quotes. One is from Alan Thompson, the chair of Roma, who in an article in Ontario Farmer about the impact of COVID-19 on rural municipalities versus urban municipalities, commented that cities are hit harder if they have public transit, quote, which is a real black hole for them, unquote. And the other quote is from Michael Dubin, who on his first day as the new CAO of Oxford County was interviewed by Heart FM, and he said, fortunately, we don't have a big, large transit function, which for a lot of municipalities is a real problem for them because they are losing so much money on transit. We dodged a bullet over the last 7 months by not having a transit system. This plan is flawed at the best of times for all the reasons that I've listed. It's even worse due to COVID-19. Buying something that you don't need, doesn't work, and has missing parts is never a good idea. And I don't believe Zorra should be part of this intercommunity project, and I will not be supporting this motion. I would also like to thank Mayor Ryan and council for allowing me to go on what may have been a bit of a diatribe, but I feel very passionately about this position, and as I had many questions, I also had many points, so I appreciate your letting me do that.
Anyone else want to speak to it? I'll read the motion again then for clarity.
I'd like to a recorded vote on this, please.
Recorded vote, Donna, you ready? I'll read it while you get ready. Moved by Katie Davies, seconded by Ron Forbes, that the Township of Zorra supports the North Oxford Intercommunity Bus Transit System through a collaborative partnership with the Township of Blandford, the Township of East Zorra, Tavistock, and Oxford County, and is committed to providing $15,000 of financial support in 2021 and ongoing annual support from 2022 to 2026 in the amount of $22,500. And further, that the Township of Zorra agrees to receiving and being responsible for the dedicated gas tax funds from the province of Ontario for the North Oxford Intercommunity Bus Transit System. And further, that the Township of Zorra consider potential partnership integration of the North Oxford Intercommunity Bus Transit System with a county-wide intercommunity bus transit system in 2027, providing both intra-county and inter-regional connections. Anyone else? Those in favor?
Recorded vote.
Sorry. Go ahead, Donna. Run it. I forgot.
Okay, this is a recorded vote. When I pull your award from the lottery box, state if you're for or against the motion. Mayor,
Yay.
Councillor Steve McDonald,
Nay.
Councillor Paul Mitchell,
Nay.
Councillor Katie Davies,
In favor?
and Councillor Ron Forbes.
Oh, I hate this. Marcus has got his pen ready. Yeah, I said at the beginning I supported it. I listened very intently to Councillor Mitchell. He's got a lot of valid points over there, and I'm going to side with Paul on this. I think he's made a very good case on this, and I'm going to vote against the motion.
The motion is defeated 2-3. So I just got a message that the A.J. Baker teacher is out sick today. She doesn't want to pass off that delegation to substitute. So that means that 11:05 item is gone. So we have 10:55 now, and then 11:45 is Zorra Park. And Alicia has asked if we can take a break when this one's over to deal with some issues she's dealing with over there. So I think right now it's showing us 10:30. Maybe we'll be back here 10. 10:45, and we can maybe try and deal with the council meeting schedule for next year, and then 10:55 for presentation. So we're adjourned until 10:45. All right, we are back from break, and I'll call the meeting to order, and we have a timed item at 10:55, but we'll try and get rid of some business before then. And that would be 8.6A Corporate Services Department Memorandum 2020-127 from the Director of Corporate Services regarding 2021 council meeting schedule. Donna, do you want to highlight anything in that for council?
No, I have nothing to add. Any questions from council?
Questions from council? Paul?
And I apologize, Don, I didn't think of this until just now. January 20th meeting, I believe that Roma will be on virtually at that point. And if we have delegations, could that be a conflict? I know it's,
I mean, historically, delegations have all been in the daytime.
that one is a 9 a.m. meeting, so.
The 20th?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, yes, we scheduled to 9, yeah.
It's a stretch, but I just wondered if we may.
I mean, we had virtual delegations at AMO, so I don't see why we wouldn't ask for delegations and potentially get them for Roma. But that's part of the budget schedule that we just adopted though, right?
Yeah.
Don?
Is it still scheduled to go this Sunday to Tuesday or Wednesday? Roma?
It's scheduled for January 25th to the 26th.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, so not that then.
Forget I said anything, I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyone else? One thing I would just point out, it's proposed that the March 17 meeting be canceled. It's in the motion that I'm going to read, but that came up at agenda review yesterday to cancel the one, which was our practice last year to cancel the second meeting in March because we added, at the same time, we added second ones in January and February. So the March 17 one was the March break one, which is questionable how valuable March break is this year. But for people with school-age children, it's still, I think, reasonable one. And any other questions for Don on the report before I read the motion? It has all the dates in it, the non-normal ones, so. Okay, so moved by Katie Davies, seconded by Ron Forbes, that memorandum 2020-127 from the Director of Corporate Services regarding the 2021 council meeting schedule be received and filed, and that council deviate from procedural bylaw 05-04, section 4.1 to reschedule or cancel the following meetings for 2021. 1. Wednesday, January 6th, 2021 is rescheduled to Thursday, January 14th, 2021 at 9 a.m. 2. Wednesday, January 20th, 2021 is rescheduled from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. 3. Wednesday, March 17th, 2020 is canceled. 4. Wednesday, July 21st, 2021 is canceled. So that should have been 2021. Sorry, this is a typo that I read in the March one. So 4, Wednesday, March 21st, 2021 is canceled. 5, Wednesday, August 18, 2021 is canceled. 6, Wednesday, November 17th, 2021 is rescheduled from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. and that the 2021 meeting calendar as provided in the report be adopted. Anyone? Katie?
Just to confirm what you had said, this motion has the second meeting in March removed. This year we did end up with having 2 March meetings only because one of them was a special emergency meeting teleconference due to COVID. No, in 2020, so we've been looking at 3, but you're probably looking at 2019. So in 2020, because I did the same thing,
Okay.
in 2020 we had a meeting at 9 o'clock on the 4th, and then we had a 4 p.m. meeting on the 24th, and that was a special emergency teleconference meeting in relation to COVID. So this time last year, we had proposed to remove that second meeting in March, in part because it had some March break conflicts, but I think this year, even if we don't have March break conflicts of the same nature, the other supporting aspects of moving it were the addition of the January and February 2nd meetings, as well as we moved up our budget process. So this meeting schedule last year did accommodate quite well from my memory, our ability to get our work done and to have the appropriate amount of meetings at the right times in terms of budgeting. And we did not see an increase or in a workload on a specific meeting before or after that removed March meeting as a result of it. So that was why I was in support of also removing that second meeting for this coming year.
Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we're there? Yeah. Okay. So the next item then is 10:55 a.m. time in recognition of Norma Cloud for his efforts on behalf of the War Amps Child Amputee Program. And are we all connected and?
Just one second, I have to just unmute everyone.
Okay, we're good to go. So I've known Noah since before my kids went to school because Noah was always the big kid in the community who helped out. He played all the sports, he joined in on everything. And to be honest, I think most people didn't really pay much attention to the fact that he was an amputee, except that Noah wanted people to know. He didn't want people to know because he wanted the attention. I'm sure, like most kids, he probably didn't want that much attention, but he definitely wanted to normalize that for other kids, all the kids in his school and his community. He wanted them to understand what that was and what it meant and what it didn't mean. And he extended that then beyond his school community and beyond Kintor area to become a member of the War Amps Child Amputee Program. He has been a junior counselor at CHAMP seminars for young amputees from across Ontario to learn about the latest in artificial limbs and deal with issues such as teasing and staring. Noah is also a strong advocate of the War Amps Play Safe message and has been acting as a safety ambassador since he was 9 years old. In his role with the War Amps and in our community in general, he has continued to do what he has always done, to do his part as a role model for younger kids, offering experience, advice, and support. Noah is an excellent example of both the War Amps philosophy, amputees helping amputees, and obviously a great example of someone doing their part to help others. I can't, really say enough about someone who at the age of 9 decides that he wants to, draw attention to something that most kids at the age of 9 wouldn't want anyone to pay attention to, but he decides he's gonna offer that out to his community because he thinks they have something to learn from it. And verging into the personal, I can certainly say my kids certainly learned something from it. And when I told them last night that we were going to be presenting this, Fiona squealed, Noah, when she heard that you were going to be getting this recognition today. So congratulations, Noah, and thank you for everything you've done, for Kintor, for Zorra, for all the kids at AJ Baker, the kids on your hockey teams, and all the kids that you have helped through War Amps. I'm not sure if you can see this, but you'll be getting it in short order anyway. And at this point, I'd just ask if you had anything that you wanted to say, Noah.
Yeah, I would just like to thank you for having me here at the meeting today to acknowledge my work with the War Amps. This organization has provided me and my family with unmatched support throughout my life through their various services and providing us various rounds of artificial limbs, as well as always providing an outlet for any concerns regarding my amputation for me, my family, and also my community as well. It was through programs like Matching Mothers that I was able to find other people with amputation similar to mine, which kind of helped me to understand and cope with my own. And through the funding of artificial limbs, that I was able to pursue any hobby or passion that I wanted to throughout my life. I can't detail how much their support has helped me and every other amputee I know.
Thanks, Noah. Of course, I'm also going to thank your mom and dad, Annette and Mac, for all the support I'm sure that they gave you, and that resulted in at least partially in the kid that you turned out to be. Thanks very much. So, are we going to mail that to him, or is somebody going to come and pick it up, or yeah? Yeah. Oh, we can deliver it to his parents.
Yeah.
Just up the road. Right? Yeah. All right. Thanks, McLeod.
Thanks so much.
All right. Are we off that now? So then we're, next time item we have is 11:45, so we got 45 minutes until the Zorra Highland Park delegations. We have no fire department, no recreation, no building and drainage reports. So, I think the next one would be 8.4A, Public Works Department, Memorandum 2020-128 from the Director of Public Works regarding the traffic calming policy. And hopefully we can get through that in 45 minutes, which hopefully we can. It's weird, if I'm not responding to you guys on Teams here sometimes, it's because it keeps saying that it has trouble connecting. So I get stuff and then I don't, and then I send, it's weird. So I shut it down and restarted it, but just in case I'm not responding to you, I may not have got it. So it's coming on my phone now for some reason, but not on here. So if I'm looking at this, everybody, it's not because I'm like responding to text, it's because I'm getting slacks from Donna and the shift. I am getting texts, but I'm not, I'm ignoring those and just looking at the messages. Steve, traffic calming and speed control policy and guidelines, do you want to highlight anything in that for council before I ask them for questions?
I don't think so. I think pretty much all self-explanatory. Just going up here. So yeah, I think we've got something pretty good here. I'll open it up.
Questions from council on the report? Paul?
Steve beat me to it.
Steve?
Not so much as a question, but I've always been a little dubious on some of these traffic calming methods until I went on our little vacation in September, and I believe that we were heading up to North Bay, and it was going through a school zone and a fairly well-traveled section of highway, and all of a sudden the white lines on the edge of the road tapered in, and all of a sudden you felt like you were driving, like the road didn't change, but the driving lanes did, and you just instinctively slowed down. I don't, something that simple for calming the traffic. Just a comment.
Yeah, these things, they do work. They are proven. There's always other things coming out that have been tried and tested, and that's one nice thing with this policy. We can always add to it, and if there's other measures out there, we can always add to it.
Paul?
No, I comment as well, and one question is, it just really, really well done. I noticed that both Steve and Alicia's names were at the bottom of this report, and I could, reading through it, I could see there's Steve's knowledge on all things roads, and there's Alicia's knowledge on all things, how to write up a policy and a guideline, and it just came through shining. It answers all the questions: who, what, when, where, and why. And it has all kinds of measurables in there, and it has all kinds of amazing communication. So anybody that has an issue knows who to talk to, what they got to do, and it was well worth all the work that went into it. So kudos to both of you on it. My only question is 6.5 of the policy. It states that the initial contact would go to the Director of Public Works. Should the director decide that the matter does not warrant further consideration, process will stop, and the proponent and affected parties will be advised. I'm just throwing out for discussion, should there be stated in there that the proponent can appeal to council if they don't agree with the decision of Public Works?
So, yeah, Alicia and I talked about this yesterday, and it was brought up in review. Any resident can bring in council. So if there's an issue with, if they're not happy with my decision,
Mhm.
they can absolutely come to council on the issue. It doesn't have to be this issue with traffic calming, it could be any issue.
Yeah.
But if they want to come to council and appeal that decision, then that's not an issue at all.
So I'm suggesting that the only change I would make to all these pages is that we add a line there. It said that if the proponent is unhappy with the director's decision, it can be appealed to council. Because I think we all understand that they can appeal any decision, but I think the general public thinks, if you say no, well, we're not happy and that's it. And I think it would take some of the, not the onus, but maybe some of the pressure off you and your successors that the general public would consider your word the last word on this. And I'm sure when it came to appeal, that you would have a good case of why it shouldn't go forward. I just think that might be a benefit to add that line to the policy.
Yes, we talked about that, Alicia, and what did we end up with the decision on that?
So in regards to that, like you said previously, the public can appeal to council with any decision that staff makes. We do involve council into the decision-making process later on. At this point in the policy, this is mainly speaking to what we're calling the initial review. So the initial review mainly speaks to, is this a road under our jurisdiction, and is it the right length that warrants a traffic calming measure? So I'm not sure if the appeal process to council would be appropriate at this stage, but it is later on in the policy already, the appeal.
Okay.
Anyone else? Ron?
Just more of an edit, I think. There in where you put down some of the costs on some of the signage and stuff, I felt that those signage costs seemed a lot lower than they should have been. I think there's one I noticed there was $300, and I'm thinking you can't even get the post for $300, let alone the sign and install it and the whole thing. So sometimes I think if we see too small a number, then yeah, there's an example right there. If we see too small of a number, then the community thinks, ooh, that's a cheap solution, let's do it. But in actual fact, we're gonna send 2 men in a truck and we gotta get locates for services and then we gotta put in the sign. So maybe that should read $1,000 or $1,500 in there. And whether that's really important or not, I don't know, but it was just something that I noticed. And
Yeah, well, cost of say, like for example, for the picture of a stop sign is about $100. Hardware to put it up is about $50. So by the time we were staff time and everything, so we're sitting around the $200 mark. I was edited last year. At this time when I started working on this report, I can update that a little bit. It probably will make change by $50, but it's like anything in all the measures, costs are going to go up as years go on.
so we could get a stop sign installed for $200.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Good.
Standard size stop sign on a steel or wooden post. Yeah, $200.
Anyone else? Questions on the report? The motion I have in front of me is moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that memorandum 2020-128 from the Director of Public Works be received, and that council adopts in principle policy 600-05, traffic calming policy and guidelines, and that the policy be referred to the Zorra Policing Committee for their review and comment. Paul, you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, the motion is very similar to the recommendation that's in the report. The one change that I was glad to see was that at this point, we're just approving it in principle and we're sending the police committee to review. And we talked at last meeting about some of our frustrations with lack of recommendations coming to us from our various committees. This is a initiative that came from police committee, and I think it's only fair that we go back to them before we actually adopt it. And I don't imagine that they're going to send back pages and pages of changes, but I think as part of the process, and if we're going to encourage our committees to be involved, that we should give them a chance to review their initiatives, the results of their initiatives before we adopt them. So I was very happy with the motion as it's written.
Steve, as the seconder, do you have anything to say?
No, that's basically what I was gonna say. I thought the report as a whole was all straightforward and done excellent. I don't see any issues with anything.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Yeah, Steve, I think this report has, this policy has great potential, especially the community engagement part. I think you guys have really, taken the township's commitment in the strategic plan to be engaged on this and safe and, vibrant communities. It kind of all comes together in this, and there's huge potential. So I'm really looking forward to hearing back from the committee on it and seeing where we go forward with it. But I think it is really well done and has huge potential for the community to engage in a meaningful way with the township. So thank you very much for that.
And I have to, a lot of staff help on this. So.
Yeah, absolutely. My thanks to all staff. I know this was not a, you read something like this, and that's not a person's work. I mean, let's be honest, we're thinking of people. I'm sure at some point you looked at other municipalities' websites too. And all.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. Like resources were endless,
yeah.
In-house resources were unbelievable, and
Yeah.
helpful, and did great.
Well, and that's why we got those in-house resources. Right? So good for us.
It all comes back to us, right?
One way or another, believe me. Okay. So I think then, thanks, Steve. I think where we're up to then is boards and committees. Court Security Advisory Committee update from committee member Davies.
Sure, so I had a meeting the evening before our previous council meeting, so it was too tight a turnaround to update you then, but it was just over 2 weeks ago. Quick reminder, I was appointed to the Court Security Advisory Committee to meet annually with membership from the other area municipalities to look at the cost sharing structure for court security and prisoner transportation costs incurred by Woodstock Police Services, because that's where our courts occurs. So we pay OPP for our services, but our contribution to the court costs then are on the Woodstock bill. So we have a 60-40 split, with 60% of it being Woodstock and 40% of it being the remaining area municipalities. And there has been no change. So that's sort of really quick what it is that we do, and it's an annual meeting, so we haven't looked at this kind of thing for a while. From last year to this year, there's nothing that has changed. So we voted in favor of maintaining the same cost sharing structure, but the other mandate of the committee is to continue advocating at the provincial level to have the cost covered in full. Currently there is grant funding from the province to cover part of the costs, but what's happened over the last, I think 8 or 9 years is the funding is sort of just doing this, but the operating costs are really doing this. So the gap between what is covered and not is growing, and as it's growing, it makes whatever inequities that exist in our cost sharing agreement less fair. So it's reviewed annually. We reviewed it. There was no disputing the structure that we're currently working with. But the committee is recommending to the county to continue advocating for full cost recovery. Any questions?
Questions? Paul?
Who actually provides the security? Is it Woodstock Police or OPP?
Woodstock Police.
Okay.
So that's where, because Woodstock Police provides the service, it is billed through Woodstock Police, which is then funded through the city of Woodstock. So that's why this committee was formed, so that the cost sharing agreement could be decided upon to try to, how does Zorra pay their part? What does that actually look like?
Even though the provincial legislation is clear that the host municipality of the court is 100% responsible for court security costs.
And that, yeah.
So that's where the county's actually going outside its jurisdiction and making payments for something, for a service that they're not obligated to provide.
Correct. There's a line, because of the court security costs, there's a line item budget in each of the municipalities in Oxford County that is, according to the legal opinions that I've heard, illegal, because it's 100% responsibility according to provincial legislation, the whole cost of the host municipality.
Similar to transportation.
Similar to transportation, similar to the waste depot that's operated by City of Woodstock and partially funded by Oxford County Public Works, available only to Woodstock residents and not Oxford residents in general. Any other questions on that report? I have moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies, that item 10A, Court Security Advisory Committee update be received for information purposes only. All's in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Information items. 11A, correspondence from the Honorable Sylvia Jones regarding the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019, and B, correspondence from the Honorable Steve Clark regarding the Helping Tenants and Small Businesses Act 2020. What I have is moved by Katie Davies and seconded by Ron Forbes that information items 11A through B be received and filed for information purposes only. Does anybody want to speak to either of those or pull them out? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. No unfinished, no notices of motion. Bylaws, we do have one from a little while ago here. Donna, I'm not 100% sure when I look at this, that, oh, sorry. There it is. Just double checking the one. I got a little bit confused here as to which one was the right one. Okay, so item 14 under bylaws, moved by Steve McDonald, seconded by Paul Mitchell, that bylaw 60-20 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, and further that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal there too. Can you just explain just briefly for Council Donna where this one's coming from?
This was a zone change application that was before council in February. And due to COVID, the bylaw didn't make it back to council, so this is just providing that bylaw for.
Any questions or comments on that one? All's in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And items of community interest then. So we can go through the calendar. Paul has asked for an update on SWIFT, and any other items that people want to bring attention to in the community. So we'll start with going through the calendar, and everybody just interrupt me as I go here if I'm missing something. So tomorrow afternoon, I have a meeting at Oxford County to talk about how the county may distribute the SWIFT Plus funding that the county put in. I have a meeting tomorrow afternoon with some Edinburgh residents to talk about some traffic calming. I'm not showing anything on the weekend, I don't think. The 26th was going to be community policing committee meeting, but that's canceled now, correct?
I'm sorry. It's moved to the 26th, the policing committee.
So it is on the 26th, this coming Monday.
What's
Thank
that? Sorry?
Community policing committee meeting, this Monday night. Where is that one, Alicia? It's gonna be in person in here? Do we know yet?
I believe so, but I would have to double check.
Okay. Do we have a ZRAC meeting on the evening of the 27th? Sort of.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And ZRAC meeting's here.
Okay.
Also on the 27th was supposed to be an Upper Thames meeting, but that's been canceled.
Okay. Oxford County Council meeting on the evening of the 28th. You and I have a meeting scheduled for the 29th at the county. I'm gonna ask them to reschedule that one.
Is that a Zoom? That's a
It's Zoom, yeah.
Zoom, yeah.
I'm gonna ask them to reschedule because it's my wife's 60th birthday. So I'm gonna ask them to.
And that's only going to happen once, right?
Yeah. So
So it's a Zoom.
so I'm gonna ask them if they can move that, but that's for you and I to look after.
Okay.
And then the next thing I show is that we're back here on the 4th, unless I'm missing anything. No? Anybody have any other items of community interest they want to bring up? If not, I'll go to the Swift up. Oh, Steve.
More just a question. Has there been any rumblings at all about whether there's going to be Remembrance Day stuff going on?
So, I got a letter, I can't remember whether I opened this yesterday or today, a letter from Beachville, Legion, Royal Canadian Legion Branch 495 Beachville will be hosting our annual Remembrance Day dinner on Saturday, November 7th. Cocktails will be from 5 to 5:45, opening ceremonies will be 5:45. Dinner will be served at 6. Cost of tickets will be $12. It will be a pleasure if you can attend. For tickets, call Benny Scott Poppy, Chairman, at 519-539-5309 before October 3rd, 2020. Branch would like you to lay a wreath on November 11th. If attending, please be there at 10:15 a.m. Also, this will be social distancing. Due to the pandemic, we are only going to have 50 tickets, so please let me know ASAP if you are attending. So I have not looked at that yet. I'm assuming that I'll be doing something in some fashion for it. Certainly later wreath other years. But that's the only one that we've heard from. I know Lisa is trying to reach out to the other organizations that we usually deal with. I haven't heard from her as to whether she has heard back from them yet or not. So it's frankly usually challenging every year to try and figure out what's going on. I know staff try every year to find out, and usually don't find out until the 9th or the 10th. One year we didn't find out until I think 11 o'clock on the 11th. But they're trying right now to figure that out. And it's going to be especially difficult this year because they're really trying to figure out what to do.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah, and I know the Royal Canadian Legion umbrella organization put out some communication discouraging actually gatherings, or they wouldn't be formally endorsing or encouraging them. I can't remember exactly what wording they used. So yeah, I'm not sure what everybody else is going to be doing. So, anybody else have anything? So Paul asked for an update on Swift. So last week there was an announcement in Drumbo that I attended on your behalf, where MP Hardiman and federal MP, whose name I can't remember now, who attended on behalf of Federal Minister of Infrastructure Miriam Monsef, announced the Swift funding for Oxford, and there's very detailed zoom-inable map on the Swift website that I encourage you to look at. It shows very clearly exactly where the Swift service will and will not go to. This is Swift 1. So the plan is that there would be a Swift 2. That's very much in the planning stages. It's not known what that would be, when it would be, or exactly how it would be funded. My view, and certainly those that I've talked with the county council, is that we would like Swift 2 to see exactly the same model carried out again, ideally with more money, but that's all up in the air right now. With the announcement on Thursday, in my opinion, Zorra made out, at least twice as much better than I thought we would. If we'd gotten 20% of the township covered by that, I would have been thrilled. If we'd gotten 30%, I would have fallen over. We've probably got about 40% of the uncovered area of the township covered now by this announcement, which should be starting in spring 2021. And the indications that I have are that it would be finished sometime in the fall of 2021. Based on what I've seen with fiber being put in the ground, I don't see that being an obstacle, frankly. They move quite quickly when they're putting it in. So it does not include the SWIFT Plus money that Oxford County put in, or the SWIFT Plus money that Zorra has put in. So those are still decisions that we have to make. That money is available to us. I think for Zorra, I think we have the number I have in my head is 345,000 we have sitting in reserve that we could use to do what we want with. So as I say, there's going to be a meeting at the county tomorrow to discuss options for what to do with the county SWIFT Plus money. And then at some point, this council will have to decide what we want to do with our SWIFT Plus money. So one of the options obviously is to go to the people who are putting the fiber in the ground for SWIFT and say, don't stop at that intersection, just keep going. How much would that cost? And we could evaluate, what we think those economies of scale would be for our money. Another option would be to wait and see what the county does with the SWIFT Plus money and do a version of that. Or another option is for us to say, whatever we want with it. It's our money, it's in reserve, there's no commitment to it. We put it there with a commitment to be SWIFT money, but it's our money, it's ours to decide. That was the intention, we put it in then. It's up to this council what they want to do with that money now. I don't know if that answers your question.
No,
If you have any other follow-ups or?
There's a line going down 19 to the Kintors. As far as you know, that's going to tie in with that tower that was.
I have no idea, because that would be up to that owner of that tower, the property owner and the operator of the tower, if they want to tie in
That
or
wasn't
not.
part of the.
But, certainly part of the vision of SWIFT is that all such towers, if a fiber line went by that property, that those tower owners and operators would say, I can extract more value out of this tower if I connect to fiber.
Yeah, because that upgrades the capacity of that tower rather than feeding off other towers.
So that's certainly the hope, but of course, part of the deal with SWIFT is you put the fiber in the ground. There's not even a promise or an obligation on a resident to connect.
Who hooks up's entirely up to them.
Right. But I know from talking to some ISPs that operate in this area that they typically see in the short term they see about an 80% connection from residences and businesses, and that then over the next sort of 2 to 5 years that bumps its way up to 85, 90+% as time goes, and surely eventually everybody would connect. I can't imagine a world 20 years from now where people wouldn't be connected to fiber in front of their house. So.
Yeah.
So that has always been part of the game of this, was to put the service out. You don't know who's going to connect. You can't be sure who's going to connect, but that if it's a valuable service that they will connect. So, yeah. Any other? All right, that's it. That's with then. Any other items of community interest? All right. Closed meeting session, we have none, and 11:27. So I think, if I'm right, Donna, we're done until the school delegation, right?
Correct.
So maybe we will take a break and come back in here at, what is that time for, sorry? 11:45. Come back in here at 11:44. So we're adjourned.
I'll get ready with one of these.
Second.
So we're calling the meeting back to order, and we are at that time for our Zorra Local Government Week presentations. And the A.J. Baker ones, unfortunately, were canceled due to illness, not COVID-related illness at A.J. Baker. But we are happy to have 3 presentations from Zorra Highland Park Public School, and staff are going to play us 3 separate videos. After each video, we'll have some questions from council for the students in the school. So,
Do you want to introduce yourself quickly for the class?
yes, thank you. So before we play the first video, council will go around and just introduce yourselves so that the students know who we all are. We're just getting you guys on video. Can they hear us now? Yeah, good.
Can you guys hear us okay?
Yes, we can see you, great, thank you.
Okay, great.
Great. We can't see them though.
Not now, but
Yeah,
during
no,
Q&A.
video.
Okay.
After videos.
So I'll lead off. My name is Marcus Ryan. I'm your mayor. This is my second term on council. First term was as Ward 3 councillor. This term as mayor, and I'm also your Oxford County councillor at Oxford County. I had 2 kids that went to A.J. Baker Public School. One's still there, and one now going to St. Mary's DCDI. And I have to say, probably one of my proudest accomplishments and most satisfying accomplishments is getting these council meetings with our local elementary schools. The presentations are always well prepared, imaginative, and at least one every year from our schools leads to an actual change in our community, whether it's about requiring waste receptacles at drive-throughs or a splash park. You guys have made concrete changes, so I'm really looking forward to your presentations today. I think probably we should go around in an order of wards, let's say. So, Ron.
Good morning, I'm Ron Forbes, councillor in Ward 1, and I've been on Zorra Council for 10 years now.
My name is Katie Davies. I'm the counselor in Ward 2. Ward 2 is Tempsford, so I have the smallest area ward, but I have a lot of people that live in that small area. And this is my first term on council, and I have 2 daughters that go to Tempsford Public School, and I've got a little guy at home that's not in school yet. And Government Week is my favorite week, probably for council meetings, and really miss being in the school and seeing you guys, but love that you put together these presentations, and hopefully we'll be back in the schools next year.
Good morning, I'm Paul Mitchell. I'm the councillor in my first term for Ward 3, which is Uniondale, Kintor, Lakeside, and all the farmland that surrounds it. I have 2 growing sons and 2 growing daughters who all graduated from A.J. Baker and went into high school and university, and they're all moved out and employed, so it's good. So I'm looking forward to your presentation, and that's all I've got to say at this point.
Councillor Steve McDonald, I'm looking after Ward 4, which is Umbro, Harrington and area, and Zorra Highland is right smack dab in the middle of that. And just as background, I attended Zorra Highland myself many years ago now, so I'm a graduate there too.
So, Alicia, we're ready with the video.
No, the sound is not very loud, so I'm not.
Okay.
It's terrific.
The reason why we're doing this is because we want to never give up, and we want to make the community a kinder place. Suggestion for inspirational quotes on the community sidewalk. You shine like the stars, never not be yourself. The key to success is to focus on goals, not obstacles. Your limitation is just your imagination. Stop saying I wish, start saying I will. Just because my path is different doesn't mean I'm lost. Cost. Paint, $80. Spray paint, $40. Concrete, 1 slab, $750. Brush, $50. Total cost is around $1,000. Where? Our location is Matheson Park, Umbro, Ontario.
them so council can ask them some questions?
You're still connected.
Yeah? So we can't see them, but they can see and hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
You can turn our video on if you want to see the kids, but.
Oh, yeah, I want to see kids. There we go. Can we tilt? There you go. Yeah, stand up so we can see you guys. Come on, nobody else is waving. That's more like it. Thank you. So at this point, I'm gonna open up to council questions for you guys on the presentation that we just had. Okay? You can hear us all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So questions from council on the delegation. Katie.
Sure. Good work, guys. That was a great presentation. I love the part that said, you know, part of why you're doing this is to make the community a tiny bit friendlier. And I liked that because I think sometimes just small changes can have a really big impact on our community. So you guys are pretty bright to identify that and to know that just doing something so small can really have a big impact. My question for you is about the items on your budget. So you have concrete as one of the items, and then you have paint, spray paint and brushes. So are you planning to put in new concrete, sidewalk in a new area, or are you asking to paint on existing sidewalks?
Well, some of them, the ones that are like sort of destroyed, not really. Those ones will be needing new concrete in them, but the ones that are perfect, we can just paint over them.
Can I ask a follow-up question? And then my next question is, have you put any thought into what types of colors you might use, if there'll be different colors or all the same, and if you know about the colors of Zorra Township and the colors that we like to see in projects?
We have purple, orange, yellow, green, and pink, and blue, and red.
So you have plans to use lots of different colors?
Yes.
Okay. So your costs might be a little bit higher if you use lots of different colors, because every different color you use, you'll need new paint, right? So if your budget starts to get a little bit tight, a good way to reduce it might be to just choose a couple different colors, do you think?
Yeah.
I like to remind, well, I guess everybody, that our colors here in Zorra that we really like are purple and yellow, kind of gold. So if you're working with Zorra Township staff or council, if you say purple and gold, then you're more likely to get a positive result. Okay? Good work.
That's what we meant.
Good answer.
Like it.
Any other questions from council on this delegation? Ron?
So you identified that some of those sidewalks were in bad shape and that they need to be fixed, and you put it in your budget that you were going to fix them for $1,000. Did you think about maybe talking to the Public Works Department and saying first that this sidewalk maybe should be fixed, and then that wouldn't have to go in your budget? I take it that that's a yes, and that might be a plan, that you could go and talk to the Public Works Director. Good, there you go. He's sitting here in the room, so he already knows about it.
Any other questions for the delegation? So a couple things. So you guys are saying you specifically want to do this in front of Matheson Park, right? Is there a specific reason you want to do it there and just there, as opposed to other sidewalks in Embro?
There is when there's baseball games and like you're all stressed out and you're afraid you're gonna lose. Those inspiring comments are just there to remember that you matter and that you have good luck in this game.
That's a good idea. What about a couple others, like on on Commissioners or on Embro Road where people walk around shopping and stuff, you could put some down there, you know, similar like positive encouraging messages, but also, you know, you could put stuff on the sidewalk to say there's a restaurant over there, or there's a park over there, or whatever, that kind of thing too. Yeah? I think a lot of people would find that really, like, you know, helpful, but also I think if it was done by kids, it would be really appealing to people, you know, to see that kind of thing in the community done by the kids of that community. I think people would like that. But by all means, you know, where you guys want to do it is fine too. If nobody else has any other questions, have we got a motion for this? It's coming. Okay. So the councilors are trying to decide right now what they want to do with your delegation, whether they want to support it or not. Are you guys nervous?
Yeah.
Good. You should be. You should be. It's a moment of truth now. You're going to find out. I've got it here in front of me, okay? You ready? Moved by Katie Davies, seconded by Ron Forbes, that staff provide council with a report on the feasibility of the inspirational sidewalk painting project as presented by the students at Zorra Highland Park. Now, just before I call the vote on this and ask the councilors to speak to it for debate, I just want to ask you guys a question. Do you guys know what feasibility means?
No.
So feasibility means how able you are to do a thing, what it might cost, how hard it might be, how long it might take. So basically what this motion is saying is that council is at least interested enough in your idea that they want staff to tell them, what would this really cost? Is there any downsides to doing this? How long would this take? Okay? Okay. That's a good thing, right? It means they're at least interested in your delegation. So Katie, do you want to speak to your motion?
I think this is a great idea, a great initiative by the students, and I would like to know a bit more from our staff. Some of the things that I was thinking of is, you know, would the paint make the sidewalk slippery if it was wet? So we want to make sure we have all the right information to make a good decision and hopefully get to move forwards with this. So I'm looking for a little bit more information from our staff. I've had excellent information from the students, and it's a pretty exciting project.
Yeah, so the same thing, the reason I seconded that motion, because we are sending it back to staff to get more information. And when I mentioned to you earlier about talking to the Public Works Director, now you don't have to. This is going to end up on his desk, and he can maybe take a little drive out to Matheson Park and just have a look at that sidewalk and just determine. He might say that, ooh, the whole thing needs ripped up and we're going to need $20,000 worth of concrete. Or he might come back and say, you know what, we can patch up some of those things and maybe do it all for $100. So that's the kind of information we're going to get from our staff, and then you guys can tune in at a future date and find out what we did with it. Thank you.
Paul or Steve, any?
No, excellent presentation.
All right, I'm gonna call the vote now for council to decide on whether they want to do this. I'll read the question again so you guys can understand what's going on, and then I'll call the vote, okay? So moved by Katie Davies and seconded by Ron Forbes, that staff provide council with a report on the feasibility of the inspirational sidewalk painting project as presented by the students at Zorra Highland Park. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So that was unanimous, guys. All 5 councilors said they want a report from staff on how to do your project. So as Councillor Ford said, at a later date, at a future council meeting, we will get that report back from staff, and then you guys can watch that either live. If it's a day meeting, you can watch it live on YouTube in your classroom. You know, tell Mr. O'Day and Mrs. Passmore that you think you should be able to watch it live in your classroom that day. And if you can't watch it live, you can watch it on YouTube later on sometime, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I love this idea. I'm already thinking maybe we should, if the report from staff is good, I'm wondering if we should try and, maybe you guys should challenge the other schools to do a similar version of it and paint sidewalks in their communities as well. Think about that when the report comes back.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. We're going to go on to the next one now, okay?
leash-free dog park at the Admiral Pond by Macy Taylor. The size of the estimated goal. Inspire and comment at the sidewalk by using an
The principal just texted me a picture of the from behind the 4 kids of them all looking at the monitor, looking at us during the thing.
Is AJ Baker rescheduling?
We're gonna talk to her about it. They're totally ready to go and everything like that, so yeah, we'll just reschedule it for another day.
Inspire and comment at the sidewalk by using an adult. Why? The reason why we're doing this is because we want the community to never give up.
You must have loved that, so I thought.
Leash-free dog park at the Admiral
I love
Pond by Macy Taylor.
There's a lot of layers.
The size of the estimated cost. The size of the park I have estimated 100 feet by 200.
I love that they costed out replacement of damaged sidewalk. Like this one needs to be polished up. Like there's some real.
If they'd asked me, I would have said, don't ask for that.
Yeah.
It just drives your price up.
Yeah.
You're not asking for it, you don't need it.
Ready?
Leash-free dog park at the
He knew
Admiral
that was
Pond by Macy Taylor. The size of the estimated cost. The size of the park I have estimated 100 feet by 200 feet, in total 600 feet. Estimated cost for 600 feet of fencing is $792. Estimated cost for 120 fence posts is $1,200. Estimated cost for one chain link gate is $70. And total estimate cost is $2,062. Fun fact, $3 around the city of the Titanic. Why I think this is a good idea. I believe that leash-free dog parks at Emerald Pond will be a great movement because it's a safe place to let your dogs run through that you are able to go on the road or run away and get lost. But that dogs are social and like making friends. So a leash-free dog park is a great space for them to stay friends. How this will help the community. A leash-free dog park at the Emerald Pond will help the community by giving dogs and owners a safe outdoor space. Encouraging people to do more outdoor activities. It gives dogs and owners a safe place to enjoy the beauty Emerald has to offer. Currently, the only fenced-in part of Emerald has a playground in it, which is not safe for dogs or children or dogs. It helps with the lynch laws and property damage done by people that do not have a place that allow their dogs to run around. Fun fact, the bloodhound census smell can be used as evidence in the location. My idea is a leash-free dog park should be located at the Emerald Pond convenient area. I think the park should go on the southwest side. But, I forgot to put this sign in, but if that doesn't work, the park behind the Kids on Coffee, where the waterworks is, will also work. The address of the Emerald Pond is 843-968 Road 84 Emerald Pond.
Thanks very much for that. Are we hooked up to do the questions now?
Hello.
We can't quite see you yet. Give us 1 second, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Don't go away. Stay right there. There you are. All right. You guys can. Do we have to dance too? You guys can hear us okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to ask council for questions now on your presentation, okay? Paul.
Excellent presentation. You had done a lot of research. You came up with prices of how much it would cost to build it. You also came up with a location, and you looked at other alternatives in Embro that, and you gave us some reasons why it's needed. Whenever I drive by the dog park in Thamesford, I see the dogs running around, and the dogs will look really happy. So I think this is a project that Embro could get behind. So my question is, why are you suggesting that it be at the Embro Pond instead of someplace closer to, right into Embro, where it would be easier for people to get to?
I was driving beside the Emerald Pond one time, and it looked like a really pretty space. So it's pretty for people and dogs to go outside, and there's not as much property damage done. Well, there can be, but I did have backup plans just in case that would work.
My second question is, did you know that there's a Embro Pond Association that actually runs the pond? And have you talked to them about what their thoughts are on this idea?
Mr. Ode told me about it, and he said, well, it may not work. And now I haven't talked to anybody. He said it may not work. So for that, so I spent an extra 2 days searching different places.
Okay, thank you.
But yes, I knew about it, and I did not contact anybody.
Any other questions? So yeah, I had a similar question to what Councillor Mitchell had, and that is because the land at the Embro Pond is owned by the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. So it would be, Zorra could work with Upper Thames to put a dog park there, but we couldn't do it on our own, as opposed to if it was on park property in Zorra, or particularly in Embro that we own, then it would be simpler for us to do. So you guys, you're open to at least considering some other options for locations?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there any other questions? I do have a motion here from a councillor. You guys were paying attention to the last one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read it out, and if there's anything in it that you might not understand, then I'll explain that to you before I call the vote, so you know what's going on, okay? Okay, so I have moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that township staff investigate community interest in establishing a leash-free dog park in Embro or a nearby location and provide a report to council. So do you guys understand what that means?
No, not really. Kind of.
So what he's saying is he wants staff to tell us, do they think that there is actually interest, like people would actually use the dog park, right? Like we can build a dog park, but if nobody comes and uses it, it's not worth it, right? If lots of people come and use it, then it's worth it. So what he's saying is, does staff have any opinion? Because we have excellent, recreation staff who are experts in this kind of thing, to research that and tell us, do we think people will use it? For example, one thing they might look at is there is a Thamesford off-leash dog park right beside the river in Thamesford, just immediately south of the train tracks in Thamesford. So they may be able to look at that and say, is there interest? Is it used? How much does it cost us to maintain it? Those kinds of things. So basically what he's saying is staff come back and tell us what their expert opinion is. Do we think this would be used by residents? Okay? All right, so I'm going to read it again now and Paul, and then ask if first I'll just ask if anybody wants to speak to it. Paul, do you want to speak to the motion?
No, Marcus, I think you you said exactly what, if the first step of doing a project, and this is not an inexpensive project, the first step is finding out how much need there is in the community and how much usage there would be. And as Mayor Ryan said, we have ways that our staff can do that. So that's what I'm recommending, that our staff find out that information before we invest any money in your project.
Steve?
That's basically the same thing I was going to say. I like the idea of the dog park, and we'll let staff investigate where we can put it or how many people would use it.
Anyone else? All right, I'm gonna read it again and then I'll call the question, which means I'll ask them to vote, okay? So, moved by Paul Mitchell. Are you nervous? Are you guys nervous?
They look pretty comfortable.
Moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that township staff investigate community interest in establishing a leash-free dog park in Embro or a nearby location and provide a report to council. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So the same thing as the last one. There will be a report back from staff at a future council meeting. You guys can watch on YouTube at that time when staff will present the report. It'll be on agenda, so Mr. O'Day can turn on like a Google notification for that kind of thing, and he'll get notified when it'll be on a council meeting agenda, and you guys can hear the report back from staff, and council will ask questions of staff about it, and debate it, and decide what to do, okay? Good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, were you going to ask a question about where they got that comment from the end of the presentation?
Clothing rack by Sybil Hay and Brennan Barr. Where we would like to put the clothing rack in the Embro Library. Cost. In total, the cost of the clothing rack will be $8 to $150. Why? We want a clothing rack in the Embro Library because some people can't afford clothes. We think everyone should get something to wear. How? This will affect the community. People who can't afford clothes can actually get clothes at the Embro Library. Instead of throwing away your clothes, you can give them to people in need of new clothes. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you can really find it in your hearts to accept this offer. We thank you for giving some of your time for this presentation.
All right. And how are you, Sybil?
Good.
Good. So you can hear us just fine, right? Okay. So I'm going to ask council if they have any questions for you. I know you've been on the screen for the other two, so you know how this is going to go, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So questions on the presentation? Katie?
Another fantastic idea. I love this. I have a question for you about how it would actually work. So if people are bringing in their clothes, and then other people can come and take something if they would like it, if they need it, who would be in charge of keeping it organized? Who would hang things up? And what would happen if things that were donated maybe nobody wanted and they were there for a really long time? Who would take care of that?
My teacher actually asked me that question, and I was thinking we could take them and donate them to a Goodwill or Valley Village.
That's a really good idea. And who would be in charge what if people were looking through the clothes and some of them fell off the racks? I don't know, does your school have a lost and found? And does the lost and found look nice and tidy, or does it get kind of messy?
gets messy.
So if this is in our library, in our community, what happens if it gets messy? Who would be responsible for cleaning it up?
Can I answer?
Yeah.
Sure.
The librarians?
That would be a good option because the librarian's at the library, but that would be an added responsibility for them, so we'd have to get their permission. They'd have to want to agree to that, right? So that would be some additional work to do. And what happens if the librarian said, no way? Then would that be the end of the project, or do you think there could be some alternative solutions?
Student volunteers?
Good idea. Student volunteers, I like it. Okay.
Any other questions from council? Steve?
Just wondering if you, it's an excellent presentation, but I'm just wondering, have you investigated any of the effects of this COVID-19 pandemic? I don't know, you're allowed to give away clothes right now.
Oh, we actually can't answer that question. So we are gonna make signs out of like paper, and we're gonna put them up where the clothing is. We're gonna put them up and say, wash the clothes before you donate.
Excellent.
Any other questions? I don't have a motion for this one in front of me. Somebody?
You could write one. You better
on
have
your-
it. You're more experienced.
So they're thinking about it right now and feverishly writing away over here. Is the rest of your class in there with you, or are you just on your own in there?
On my own and a teacher.
Mr. O'Day is behind you there.
No, Mr. Roberts.
Oh, I know Mr. Roberts. Hi, Mr. Roberts.
No.
Mrs. Passmore's gone?
Yeah, here we go.
Can I say something? What's the main presenter? While we're waiting for Councillor Forbes to write a motion, I just wanted to say how awesome it was to see you recognize that sitting on a chair would be more comfortable than hovering over, but that you also got a chair for your friend too. That was the highlight of my day, seeing your thoughtfulness. That was really cool.
Thank you.
Oh, am I gonna have to read? I should have wrote it myself. I'm gonna have to read Ron's rating. Can I ask a question of staff? So in the room here, you can't see them, but sitting on the opposite side of the room, we have some staff members. And one of them is Matt Brown, and he is our Director of Recreation. So my question is for Matt Brown. So in this presentation, there's a cost for the fixture of the clothing rack. Does Zorra Township own any surplus of clothing rack fixtures that could be repurposed to eliminate the cost? Or would it need to be purchased? And if it would need to be purchased, does the costing in this presentation seem reflective of what you know the market to be?
For current inventory, we do have coated clothing racks that are portable. They're much larger than would probably be accommodated at the potential location. But for $150, as noted in their presentation, I think we could purchase a clothing rack to be suitable for a location there or at another site.
We were thinking of putting
So staff are listening to that, so we'll see what, we'll see. They're working on their motion here, so we're gonna get it in a minute. If I could, I would be biting my nails now, but we're not supposed to touch our face, right? All right, you ready? Moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies. The coat rack presentation be referred to staff to check the logistics of such being placed in the library. Do you understand that?
Kind of.
He's asking staff to report back to council on can we, logistics basically is one word that says all of, can we put it there? Would it cost us stuff to put it there? You know, are we allowed? Is it appropriate? That kind of thing, right? So a pretty wide question for staff to come back and tell us basically anything we should know really about the idea of putting a rack in the library. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Ron, you want to speak to your one?
No, that was a good presentation. I think it's a good idea, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Just that if you keep thinking about other people and what they need, just like you've demonstrated today, I'm really interested to see all the cool things that you do in your life as you grow up. So I hope you either stay in Zorra or stay connected to Zorra to let us know all the cool things that you're doing.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So I'll read the question and call the vote, okay? Moved by Ron Forbes, seconded by Katie Davies, the coat rack presentation be referred to staff to check the logistics of such being placed in the library. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So same thing again. We'll get a report back at a future date. You guys can watch on YouTube and see what the report, you can read the report in advance actually. It's all published online, so you can read the report before it comes. And then you can hear council debate and decide on it at that time, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Now, Mr. Roberts, is the class available? Do they want it, does anybody else from the class want to come in and ask council any questions of any kind at all? Like we have time set aside for you guys now if you want to.
They're actually in their classroom watching.
Okay.
They weren't able to get in, or get on the way I can in here, so, not that I know of.
Okay.
But
Well, I know you're dealing with a whole bunch of, COVID issues about who can go to what rooms and everything like that, but I just want to make sure it's available to you guys. We're sitting here right now, we're connected. If anybody wants to come down to that room or connect from another computer in another room, we can take their questions now, but if you can't, that's fine too. It's up to you.
Okay, I'll stay on the line here and double check when I want, Sybil back, but, just give me 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I think Sybil actually has a question.
Oh, go Sybil.
I have a question for you. When do you think we should put the co-rock in the umbrella?
Oh, good one. Trying to put me in the hot seat. So I'll give you a proper politician answer, and that is I'm anxiously awaiting a report from our expert staff on what they think the issues might be with that. Okay?
Okay.
I think, honestly, I think probably somewhere in the little lobby there, so like probably not in the actual library itself. You know when you go in the front door, you turn right to go in the library? But I think that front door, like where the stairs go up both sides, somewhere in there would probably be ideal, because if you put it in the library, then some people who come into the building might not actually see it, right?
Yeah.
But if it's in that first little bit when you first go in the door, that's what you want with your ideas, for people to see it and see your sign and know what it's about, whether they want to drop something off or take something. You want it to be highly visible, right? So I think probably if we could fit it in that front part, that would be best, but it's a kind of a small space. There's not a lot of room there, but again, that's why Councilor Forbes wrote his motion the way he did. The staff will look at all that and stuff and say, well, we could put a big one there, but no one will see it, or we could put a small one here where people will see it, and they'll give us some advice, and then council will debate and make a decision. Okay?
Okay.
So you got us all to yourself now. You got any other questions about anything? While we wait for Mr. Roberts?
Help me.
Okay. You got a joke you could tell us or anything?
I'll just make your sounds.
He
thing.
She's gonna be herself. She's gonna be herself.
Oh, they don't have any other questions.
Okay. Well, if you could pass our thanks on to the whole class and Mr. O'Day as well, and of course to you as well, Mr. Roberts. Three great presentations as usual, and I really do encourage you guys to look at future agendas for watching these coming back. I think probably staff could probably notify the teachers when they're going to be on an agenda, and then you guys can read them in advance and hear council debate it when it comes to that time. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Enjoy your day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We all disconnected there now? We're on normal live stream audio, video, everything's all good? Okay. So I think all I have left then, Donna, is procedural and adjournment, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You're well.
Yeah. So I have moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that bylaw 63-20 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held October 21st, 2020, be read a first, second, and third time this October 21st, 2020. And further, that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal thereto. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And if there's nothing else, then I have moved by Paul Mitchell, seconded by Steve McDonald, that this session of council be now adjourned and herewith closed at 12:28 p.m. And the next meeting of council will be called for the November 4th, 2020 at 9 a.m. in the council chambers at the Township Municipal Office. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried, and we are adjourned.